Hi, welcome to today's episode of the StudySmart Plus series. Now today what I'm going to cover are two things. Number one, I'm going to cover how do students understand the information that they have learned. And number two, once you have understood the information, how do we ensure that students or your child is able to remember the information that is being covered. Now let's talk about understanding information first. Very often when you ask students to study, they are reading things blindly. They don't actually have an understanding of what they are reading. You may be able to pronounce all the words, you may be able to understand the individual words within the sentences. That doesn't mean you are able to assemble everything together into something that makes coherent sense, that is what you need in terms of your content or in terms of the skills that are required for the particular subject. Now, so how do we ensure that students are able to understand the information? The very first step to understanding any sort of information when you are studying is to have a pre-test. I know it sounds very counterintuitive. Wait, you haven't even studied, then you want to have a test? Yes, but it's very important to have a pre-test because what we want to identify from the pre-test is what is it that the students themselves are not able to understand. Because only after you have done that step, that is where the students know, okay, so these are the problem areas that I need to focus on when I'm doing my revision. Without a pre-test, the student is often studying very blindly and is not able to process the information in the way that is useful for them. And furthermore, the tendency for students is to study things that they know because we are always in our comfort zone. We always prefer to be in our comfort zone. So when you are actually asking them to study the textbooks, they will often choose to focus on the things that they already know instead of the things that they actually need to know. So always make sure that it's a proper pre-test. It can be in the form of an assessment from previous assessment results, or it can be a very quick quiz that someone can set up for the child in order to test them on the knowledge of the particular chapters that they need to revise on. So after the pre-test, we move on to making sure that they are able to assimilate the information. What do I mean by assimilate? So it is not just about writing down the information. It is not just about processing the information even. The best way to know that they know the information is that they need to be able to write out the information in a way that is not stated in the textbooks. So they can process the information and then you ask them to write out their own notes, or you ask them to draw a mind map, whichever method suits them. Some people are able to visualize the information better in the form of a mind map. Some people prefer to write it in point form. Either way is fine, but make sure that they write out the essence of what they need to know for that particular chapter or that particular content in a way that is identifiable, in a way that is systematic. So that will tell you that if they're able to replicate the information without having to refer to the source, that tells you that yes, they definitely understand the material, because you cannot just copy blindly when you are reproducing the material. So that requires a bit of understanding. Okay, so once they are able to replicate the information through their own paraphrase or through a mind map, you know that they have definitely understood. And the third thing that you want them to do is that you want them to explain what they have drawn out or what they have written out to you. The best way to show that a student has mastery of the content is actually when they are able to explain the information to someone else in a way that the other person can understand. So if you are able to understand what your child is explaining to you, that shows that they have a complete mastery of the topic or the content that they are required to study for. So that is the best way to test whether or not they have really assimilated the information that they need to know. So that is the understanding component. So after the understanding component, most students, they don't have difficulty with understanding. If they really do, they must always make sure they ask someone who is able to explain it to them. Okay, don't say, oh, I have no one else to help me. They can always refer to their teachers at worst. But that is something that's very important. When in doubt, always make sure you ask. Now, moving on to the portion about remembering the information. So once you have understood the information, how do we ensure that the students are able to retain and remember the information after a period of time, over days, over months, however long it takes for them to recall the information that they need? That is where certain techniques with regard to memory work comes in. But the very first important thing is a lifestyle habit. Students need sufficient rest and sufficient sleep, uninterrupted sleep, in order to be able to retain information, because when we are sleeping, that is when our brain actually organizes the information and helps with the retention of information. So if students are always staying up late, because even a lot of times students study till past midnight because there's an exam the next day, things like that, That is a very harmful habit to have, because when you are not having enough sleep, the memory retention decreases dramatically. So that is a lifestyle habit that needs to be inculcated in the students. The second thing that parents need to take note of when children want to remember information, do not let them sit down and study for extreme long hours. Oh, I have a plan out an 8-hour block for you today to study your English, your math, your science, your Chinese. That is a terrible way of studying, because the laws of diminishing marginal returns tell us that over a period of time, your concentration starts to decrease, and as your concentration decreases, the amount of information that you can actually retain subsequently decreases as well. So we do not want a case where students are actually sitting down for long hours to read through their textbooks or even to remember any sort of information, because that does not help with retention of information. Your brain will very quickly lose the information that is being read to them over a period of time. So what you want to do when there is a study period is that we want to break up the study periods. So after every 45 minutes to 1 hour of studying, there needs to be an engaging activity for them to relax their brain. So it should not be something that's related to studying. And if anything, that is a good time to insert some sort of incentives for them so that they are motivated by the process of studying. So make sure you break up the periods of studying so that they do not have to study for an extreme long period of time at one go. Otherwise, that will affect the level of concentration and that decreases memory retention. The third step that you can take is to make use of certain memory techniques such as mnemonics or acronyms. Those are very useful for remembering certain short information. For example, naughty elephant sprays water. That is how we teach students even in school to remember your north, south, east and west. So use of mnemonics help the students to retain important information like this. Colors of the rainbow is also a very common mnemonic that is used to help students remember what's the order of the sequence of the color spectrum. Now, moving on, besides memory techniques, the other things that we can look at to help students remember information is through the use of flashcards. We want something what we call spaced reinforcement. Spaced reinforcement means it is often very easy for students to remember the information by chunks, and then you'll forget it the next day. So you can remember it for that 1-2 hours after you just studied, but subsequently, you lose the retention. So how to ensure that students retain the information over a period of time is by making sure that there are flashcards available that they can write themselves just to test them on a simple concept or a simple question. And then every single day, they test themselves by looking through the flashcards to make sure that they can answer those questions on the flashcards. So before they sleep or before they have a meal, just take 10 minutes out to look through the flashcards to make sure they are aware of the information on the flashcards before they actually end their day. So that is something that helps with retaining information over an extended period of time through constant repeated reinforcement that is spaced out over the duration instead of just making sure that they know the information immediately after that. So that is all that I want to cover for today. If you have any other questions, do feel free to comment on our YouTube videos and we will try to respond. If not, to follow up on our videos or to enjoy more content coming from us, do make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the subscribe button. Thank you.